Soda real quick. So hey, look at the bright side. We lasted 4 whole in-game days without a blood moon. Don't you like blood moons?
Narrator, narrates all. Server, save the world.
What the hell?
Old Punka 3 died.
Wait, what the hell? How's that happening? Narrator.
Old Punka 3 was slain by Trite LVL2. Old Punka 3 was slain by Ashinabaya LVL2. Its Streblo was slain by Vindicator. Server, save the world. You are now able to summon the Astaroth as a temporary minion. You will need a summoning item to summon it. Old Punka 3 was slain by zombie pigmen. It is pitch black, you are likely to be eaten by something. The sounds seem to have stopped. For now at least. Old Punka 3 died. Killed Old Punka 3.
Alright, I'm gonna take a break for now, dude.
Okay, have a good one.
I'll be back in like an hour, maybe two.
Okay.
So not long.
Rock, what do you?
Back. Dominic? Hi, buddy. Hello?
Don't book a cheap hotel. Hello? Book an expensive hotel for cheap on Hotwire. Is it diamond scented?
Hotwire. "100 Days in Minecraft." No, let's do better. 100 Days in Minecraft Hardcore. Well, no, I think I can do better yet. How about 100 Days in Minecraft Hardcore during the zombie apocalypse? Before we get started, special shout out to Luke the Notable for coming up with this cool 100 Days concept, and Forge Labs for putting together this awesome mod pack. I'm going to be using mostly the same rules as Forge Labs did in his amazing video, but changing up just a bit. I'll be, well, role-playing, I suppose. I'll be playing the role of our unnamed hero, waking up lost in the woods during the apocalypse, but he doesn't know that quite yet. The world is random and generated using realistic terrain type. You can find the mod pack linked in the description below, as well as links to Luke the Notable and Forge Labs channels. Please go show those guys some love. There are a few other rules that I'll be adding as the series goes, but I think it will be best to allow you and our hero to discover them as the days go by. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the other videos on the channel for near daily Let's Play Minecraft content. And now, on with the video. I woke up in a tree this morning. It seems that I've taken a hard hit to the head and it's still bleeding a bit. I don't remember what happened or who I am. I can't find any people or signs of life. I seem to be all alone.
Everything in their arsenal comes for us on the last day, if we survive till then. This is Minecraft Hardcore, the Zombie Apocalypse, created by Forgelines. Let's begin. If you enjoyed the content that I make, consider hitting the subscribe button, and if you want to help me out even more, go check out mudflaps.sh. I had done previous had prepared me for this moment. So I began the first day by collecting some supplies and investigating the nearby houses. I knew a lot of these buildings were abandoned, and I knew signs of life would be all but gone. But I wanted to see if there's any loot left behind, and to see if I could salvage anything before they became inhabited with the dead. And then, while investigating some of the nearby buildings, I saw them. The undead lurking in the shadows. This would be the first of many, I knew, but this was my planet, and I would take it back. I was then assaulted by some local sheep. I'm not quite sure what their problem was, I only wanted to borrow their meat and their wool. While out mining, I found this brand new ore. I wasn't sure if it was used in perhaps a vaccine against the zombie apocalypse, or if it was just simply a new ore added to the game. I had no idea what elements were added to this mod pack, but I was excited to find out, and to see what I could craft into becoming the ultimate survivor of the zombie apocalypse. Whilst exploring the abandoned city, I noticed some railcart tracks. I wasn't quite sure where they led, so I began to follow them down into a dark tunnel. I knew if I tried to walk through this tunnel, zombies would be spawning everywhere, and I would get clobbered. So I decided for now, I would leave it alone, but later, I was very excited to see what linked all these tracks together. I then met this man who was dancing in the street, and I began to beat him with my axe. One wasn't so bad, but I knew as the game progressed I'd be getting mobbed by more and more, and defending my city would be the only thing that mattered. I then made my way into a small cave, and I boarded up each side. As the noises grew louder and louder and the skeletons began shooting at the wall hoping for an opening, I realized this was no ordinary Minecraft world. These mobs were out to kill me from every distance around the map, and it was only going to get harder and more bosses to come. But I can do it. I can do it for civilization, and I can push these mobs back. I think. I started off the next day with many missions in mind, the first of which was a wall. I needed a wall to protect myself, because as the zombies grew stronger and stronger, they'd be able to break more and more blocks and get to me faster. So I went around the city to see what I could salvage to start making some walls around my new base. Whilst I wasn't paying attention, a zombie hit me off the bridge and I nearly died, and then he began chasing me down. I suddenly realized that these zombies weren't like normal zombies. They weren't affected by sunlight. This meant I then started work on a small farm. I knew it might happen where I was trapped inside of my base and I wasn't able to get out, as zombies swarmed my walls. So I decided to get a farm going quickly, so that if that happened, I would have food to sustain myself. As my food supply was depleting, I decided to go out and begin scavenging for some food. I killed any animal I could find, regardless of if I liked them or not. I needed food if I wanted to survive these next 100 days. After removing one more zombie's limbs from their bodies, I was able to sleep the night, safe and sound. 2 days survived, 98 to go. Let's restart civilization. The next day, I was greeted by a man who had no arms on his body. I wasn't quite sure where they went. I decided to test the theory if he could hit me. He indeed can. I then began clearing out some local brush so I could put up some walls and begin protecting myself from the onslaught of zombies that were accumulating more and more. We would need a very big open area if we were going to restart civilization. The mods in this mod pack allow us to have a new civilization grow all the way up to tier 10, with tier 10 having 30-foot high walls and guards that we can recruit. To get to this stage though, we're going to need to survive many days and onslaughts of many zombies. I don't know if it's possible, but civilization will flourish if I am at the helm. Or at least, I'll die trying to make it flourish. As nighttime came, I decided not to sleep. I wanted to place down torches and find areas that zombies could still spawn in inside of my new compound. But this was a mistake, as I ran out of torches very quickly and zombies and skeletons began to chase me down. I was cornered. There was no way out. I honestly thought this was the end. There was nothing to do. I couldn't go into the building or I'd be killed, so I began to pillar up. I knew there'd be zombies at top of the new building, but I had no choice. If I was going to survive, I needed to run. Finally, when I thought I was safe and pillared up enough to sleep, I realized that it was telling me I wasn't tired enough to sleep. It was a ghost night, meaning I was too scared to actually sleep. So I just watched and waited for morning. I began the next day by sorting through my chest and getting the necessary items to begin terraforming the land once again. I wanted to make sure by nightfall everything was level and lit up. I didn't want more zombies spawning inside of my compound. I then began to light up nearby towers around me as zombies were spawning atop and suiciding to their death in attempts to kill me. These men would stop at nothing to end my life, and as the game progressed and they were able to jump higher and had more health, I knew soon these kamikaze moves would be enough to end me if I wasn't paying attention. So I decided to take care of it now before it became a problem later. Which apocalypse is this again? I began the next day by constructing a staircase down into the mines. I knew I wanted a lot of supplies to build this new civilization, so I needed easy access to cobblestone and some rare minerals inside of the game. I then began strip mining in hopes I would run into a cavern. I knew this cavern had the potential to be very dangerous, as mobs could spawn quite a distance away and could track you even longer distances. This game is crazy, but I was able to find a cavern that wasn't inhabited by too many of the apocalyptic creatures, and I was able to begin mining. I knew if I didn't light it up though, it would soon be spawning everything from the deepest, darkest of all the holes inside of the earth, so I decided to light it up as quickly as possible, but even then, I knew I would still find some. When I was back to the surface, zombies were breaching my wall and I realized that there was an area where they could step right over it, so I made sure to destroy it and take care of the zombies that had made their way into my base. Too many blunders like this, and my life would be over. I needed to fix this and I needed to fix it now. I spent a lot of time mining, finding some more resources, and some dungeons inside of the caves. If I wanted to restart civilization, I would need a lot of resources, as the demand to build a tier 10 kingdom required a ton of cobblestone, iron, and other rare minerals. So I decided venturing now would be the best idea, so I could begin the civilization when I got atop, back to the surface. When I returned to the surface, I was greeted by many apocalyptic beings that wanted to end my life. I had no idea how they got in here, but I needed to find out how, or else my new civilization would crumble under their grip. I then built a supply camp. This will encourage survivors of the apocalypse to find me and begin helping me recreate civilization, assuming they could get here alive. I attempted to place a supply camp, but it wasn't working and I couldn't figure out why. While I was trying to figure it out, I met a wolf. I decided I would try and tame him by using some bones, but apparently that is not his forte and he'd like more delicious treats. Finally, I was able to complete the supply camp. This was a crucial role as it's your city's center for the new civilization. I knew zombies would be able to jump 3 blocks high soon, and if I wanted to survive, I would need to begin working on walls next. I began the next day by dispatching a few of the zombies' heads from their bodies. I was going to construct a wall today so I could begin keeping them out of my new compound. I then moved on to the creation of my wall. I was only going to build it too high for now, with a cap on the top to prevent mobs from spawning on it or jumping over it. But I knew as time went on, mobs would be able to jump even higher and zombies would be able to scale my wall. So for the time being this would do, but I would need a solution for the future. After my walls had emerged from the ground, I decided that society could restart, and I wanted to begin my kingdom. So I crafted a supply camp which would be the very basis of a new empire that would spawn in every survivor that still exists in this world, and we would begin to take everything back. As the day came to a close, the mobs were still entering my compound somehow. Most of them were just falling off of buildings, suiciding towards me. They would do anything to end my life. I began the next day by dispatching of the local zombies that had made their way into my compound. I then did some farming, as this would be a crucial role if I was going to restart civilization. I was going to need to be able to feed everybody. I then placed down my town hall. This would be the central point for all of the people that were going to exist inside of this new town. Creating a building, or nonetheless an empire with walls and different places inside of it, would require a ton of resources. But I knew if we wanted to recolonate and repurpose this rock we call Earth, we would need every single resource we could get, and I was ready to begin gathering. Whilst I was out exploring in the wild, I was attacked by a pack of wild Canadian geese, and as a Canadian myself, I can attest that this is exactly their behavior. Whilst out exploring, I found this ruin. It almost looked like a bunker, could protect everybody from whatever had happened before the zombie apocalypse. I'd never answered the question of why the apocalypse existed, but I was hoping that maybe by exploring this area I could find out. All I found were monsters and different treasures inside, but no answers to my questions. Whilst exploring the cave, I was able to find this library. This would be perfect because I could tear down the bookshelves and I could use them for an enchant area a bit later. After some time, I found this strange room that had carpets in it and some paintings on the wall. I immediately began to steal the paintings as I wanted them for my own household. When I opened up the chest in the center of the room, it had amazing loot. But immediately after, a creeper blew it up, and an onslaught of creepers began entering the room and began blowing up everywhere. Out of fear the loot would disappear, I backed up to the farthest corner I could and fought them away. And eventually, I was able to save some of the loot that was inside of that chest. I began the next day by organizing a bit. I then made sure my builder had all the supplies that he needed, and I decided today would be the day that I would take down one of these buildings. I wanted to venture inside and see what loot they had to hold, and what mysteries from the past still remained. Whilst I ventured through the building, I realized that if I stayed in here for very much longer, I would most likely die. I would come back later, but for now, this was too powerful for me, and I would need better gear. I began the next day by doing some farming. I then said hello to my friends that like to peep at me through this little window. I wonder what they want today. I then met some new people that had arrived in my town. I decided to give them food so that they could survive, so later they could become more useful. I did some zombie dismemberment as usual. I then began terraforming a piece of land that would become my new farm. If I was going to sustain an entire economy around me, I was going to need a lot of food for all the people that would be coming in. I think they were getting a little bit smarter because this man had learned how to climb. The next day I witnessed a citizen of my new village scale an entire building. These were quite impressive survivors, I must say so myself. I then decided to venture off and explore the subway system that existed inside this city. Now that I had a minecart, I could actually ride on it. I wanted to see how far it went, and different stations and what they had left from humanity. Whilst I looked for the first train station, I began investigating and scavenging any materials I could find. And then, after a while of searching, I found the train station that led to the tracks underneath the city, and I decided it would be a very fun time to ride on them. So I put my minecart down, and I began traveling. I had no idea which minecart track to pick, so I just picked the one on the far right, because right has to be right, as they say. While venturing through, I ran into a zombie, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I didn't know if he was going to bounce my minecart, but oh no, turns out I just go right through him. I spent the rest of the day just venturing throughout the subway system. It was quite fun to relive some of the old moments I'd had as a child, traveling on the subways. Minecarts instead of Minecrafters always bring joy to me. Inside of this desolate time, not many things do anymore. But being under the foundations of what used to be society gave me the inspiration that it was time to rebuild. As all days seem to begin in the zombie apocalypse, I began with some zombie dismemberment before I began my day. It's kind of like breakfast, only you don't eat it. I then began collecting some resources. I was going to focus on building a little bit later, but I needed to build up a good core of resources before I could do that. I then crafted an iron tower shield. I was going to take on the building and begin placing torches inside so zombies would stop spawning and falling atop of my head. I also wanted to discover what loot was in there to see what I could use to expand my kingdom. Whilst inside, I found some zombies and witches having a party, so I decided to participate by dropping lava on their heads to spice things up and make everything a little bit more hot. It worked like a charm. I have no idea how this is a witch hat and how it protects me at all, but it looks incredibly strange and I'm going to take it off now. I began the next day by raising all my walls one higher, as the zombies would now be able to jump 2 blocks at once, and they'd be able to scale these walls. If I didn't have it finished by day 20, they'd encompass my camp, and they would kill everybody inside. Whilst I was working on my walls, I got a notification that my first building was finished, and I went over to inspect it. This thing looks pretty cool, but I can't wait until it's tier 4. Then began tearing down the supply camp as I realized my town center was going to be built right on top of it. I began the next day by creating a death hole so the dead could come in and die once more. I also created an enticing sign that would attract the fellow dead to come and participate in this hole of death. I decided that the next thing I wanted to do was set up an enchant area, so I made a diamond pickaxe and I ventured down into the mines so I could begin mining some obsidian and have enough to make a nether portal and a new enchantment table. I spent the entire next day killing people on the death hole, hoping to accumulate enough experience to begin enchanting. Look at all these visitors to my new home. The next day I realized that the hole of death was not exactly that effective. I wanted to have a better area for gathering experience so I could begin enchanting my new diamond tools. So after collecting some food, I made my way back into the mines where I knew some spawners existed. I was going to create the ultimate death trap for the dead. I went with a fairly rudimentary design that dates all the way back to when zombie spawners first were introduced to Minecraft. Simply create an area with water flowing to one point. Have that point falling to another point till eventually they fall down a 1x1 hole and you can smack them at their little toes until they perish and collect their experience points. The spawners will spawn them directly into the water and they will flow to your kill point and you will gather all of their items and experience. I began the next day by crafting some bookshelves. This would be an important part of my new enchanting area, as it would allow me to get all the way to level 30 enchants. From there, I could enchant some pickaxes and begin mining for some more diamonds. If I was going to face the boss on day 25, I knew I was going to have better armor than what I had now if I was going to stand a chance at surviving the night. Next day, I was strip mining and I was able to find some diamonds, but my overzealous nature led me to lose most of them as they fell to the lava and I had no empty inventory slots to grab them. This was a tough lesson to learn, as I only left with 1 diamond ore. This would set me back a lot, but never fear, I would not stop until I had all the diamonds I would need. Whilst mining, I bumped into this man. I'm not quite sure what he's doing down here inside of his own little bunker that has no access to food or water, but I left him behind to let him be. Near the end of the mining trip, I was able to find 2 more diamond ores. I've never seen a vein this small before. I looked around for more, but I couldn't find any. 2 would be enough though, and it was time now to return to the surface. I didn't make any notes for this day, so I'm not quite sure what happened. The only thing it says is zombies. Lots and lots of zombies. Zombie horde.
Hey, over there.
I spent the next day on resource gathering. I was going to need a lot of spruce wood if I was going to construct a town hall. A town hall is a centerpiece for all the citizens inside of the society. With this, I can expand, create higher tier buildings, walls, I can recruit an army, and we can fight back against this apocalypse I began the next day by giving my resources to the builder so he could begin constructing the town hall. I then witnessed him breaking blocks. This man is slower than a snail. I then ventured into my farmland and began gathering my crops up, as I knew as more citizens came I would need to be able to feed them. I then decided I would help out my builder as he was struggling to break all the blocks around him. He's great at placing blocks, but he's not so good at breaking them, as he can only use wooden tools at this point until we've upgraded him even further. It was a tough day of building and waiting away zombies, but we were able to survive the day. I began the next day by greeting some visitors that made their way into my compound through the building next to me. I then made some new iron armor. I was going to enter the building that was next to me and begin making sure the floors were safe and eradicating any of the mobs that still existed inside. Although the spawners weren't spawning anything as of yet, I knew as I delved deeper the darkness would allow them to spawn and I'd be overrun, so I had to be very careful. But I needed these buildings to be safe because in the future when the zombie mutations got too strong, I couldn't be attacked from every side or else I would surely die. So I had to make sure at least my back was clear before I could worry about my walls. I wasn't paying attention and surely enough night came and I was overrun by many different mobs. I barely made my escape out of there alive. I needed a better plan for entering the next day so I could fully take on the building. The next day I used a lava bucket tactic. I drew a bunch of zombies and mobs towards me and then I put a lava bucket down and had them burn inside. As the mobs were going stronger with every mutation, this barely was enough to kill them. But for now it would do, and I could take down this building floor by floor. After I finished clearing out the building, I went farming for a little while, and then I began construction on what I call the rail. The rail is going to be an interconnected railway system that connects to the city's old railway system and allows me to travel anywhere around the city and also outside of the city should I need to in any emergency. The next day I continued work on the rail system. While I was working, I noticed a zombie that could jump 3 blocks high. I realized that another mutation was coming, and soon these things would be able to jump 4 blocks high. This was going to be insane. I then returned home to grab all the tracks I'd accumulated from destroying some of the city's infrastructure. I placed them down on my new bridge, and then I prepared to try it out for the first time. I climbed aboard my minecart, and I began traveling down. But very soon I ran into an issue. The issue being zombies. They were spawning directly in my path, and they were stopping me from going down the tunnel. I was going to need a way to fix this, but for now, this would do just fine. The next day, I decided on a solution to keep the zombies out. I wanted to encase my whole rail system in a system of reinforced glass, but to do that, I was going to need a lot of sand. So I enchanted a shovel, and I made my way to the closest sand pit, and I began gathering all the sand that I could. But as night fell, a sandstorm approached, and I knew I needed to rush home, or I'd be mobbed by a mob of zombies. I began the next day by requesting that my builder begin upgrading his building hut, and to do so he began scaling the side of this building. I'm not quite sure what this has to do with my request, but I would just let him be for now. I decided to wait around for a little while and make sure he would start. While I was doing that, I mined down the original leaves that I'd built with at the very beginning of the series. They were becoming very ugly and atrocious, just having a random bridge of leaves, so I decided it'd be best to take them down. I then asked the builder once again to begin upgrading his hut, but he was denying my request for some reason. It's not like I didn't feed him, I gave him 3 rotten flesh every week. After some time of still refusing to do any work, I decided that he would meet an accident. According to his work log, he was scaling a building when he fell off and died. Oh, poor man, the city will mourn for him tomorrow. And just like that, we have the new recruit, Glenn. Welcome to the building hut, Glenn. Be more careful when scaling the side of buildings. It can be quite dangerous. And just like that, Glenn began to work right away. I already like this builder more than the last one. I then began work on a semi-auto smelter. This would at least input the sand into the new furnaces so that I could begin smelting it in mass quantities. I was going to need a lot of glass if I was going to encase the whole rail system in reinforced glass. And just like that, Glenn had upgraded the builder's hut all the way to level 2. Great job, Glenn. You're truly... Are you taller than me? Citizens can't be taller than the king. But you build... I suppose I'll let it slide for now, Glenn. The next day, I politely asked Glenn to tear down an entire skyscraper. For some reason, they were refusing, so I pushed them out of the house and I said, go to work. They just looked at me as if they wanted food or something. It's not like I hadn't fed them in 2 weeks. It had only been a week and a half. But eventually, Glenn decided to get to work, and she began tearing down the building. Great job, Glenn. You're doing good. I'll help you eventually. It's just gotta do some other things first. The next day, I began working on the safety rails for my new rail system. I was going to put glass all along the sides. This way I could taunt the zombies as I escaped their vengeful chase. I noticed while I was building that I had a crowd watching me from the building aside me. Hello there, friends. The following night was a blood moon night, which for those of you who don't know means you cannot sleep and you must let the monster spawn all night. This would be great under normal circumstances, except for the fact that these zombies are 3 times as fast and can jump 3 times as high. This means that, yeah, pretty much they can jump on top of my house and also chase me down if I were to leave my house. So I boarded up the doors since they can break them down, and I waited inside, not in fear, but in wait of tomorrow when I could unfearfully take them on. I then broke down the front door and began attacking every zombie in my way. They did not belong in my compound, and I would see them rid of it. I then created a hot tub for all the zombies to go and visit, and I persuaded them to dive right in. I'm sure they'd be quite cozy in there. I then decided I wasn't afraid of the horde, and I broke down my wall and I let them in to come visit my hot tub. I was anticipating 1, maybe 10 of them. And there were about 30. This might have been a slight mistake, but using my expert ninja sprinting techniques, also known as running away from my life, I was able to persuade them to jump in the pit and to avoid me, and eventually I dealt with them all, like the pog champ I am. And then when I was fighting the last few, I made a pivotal mistake. I fell into my food treat hole, which wouldn't be the worst of ideas except for the fact that everybody followed me down there and began attacking me. I was cornered with zombies to my back and zombies to my front. But I fought through, and I survived the apocalypse again. I then went and collected more sand as I'd run out of glass for my railway system. The next day I headed down into the mines. I wanted to collect some coal so I could begin smelting down more sand into glass and expand my rail system. But while I was down there, I just decided to go mining as I needed more iron and other supplies for the future builds. The next day I put my supplies away, gathered some more materials, and left my walls to go and mine some more dark oak wood. These zombies could jump over my walls now, and to protect myself I needed to raise them even higher. I was going to work on a 2-tiered wall system soon and more defense practices, as zombies were about to get stronger, faster, and were going to be able to jump higher. But for now, this wall would do just fine. I raised all the walls around my compound, and then I saw some mans walking on top of them. I realized that because I had raised them, the mans were able to walk right off the buildings onto the walls without taking any damage. This was an issue that I was going to need to solve very quickly. I began the next day by accumulating some good old spruce wood. I was going to work on my railway system today. I wanted to work on some of the aesthetics, as currently it was just a floating bridge. I wanted to make beams that ran all the way down it for some support, so that it wouldn't fall in the case of an overload of people on top of it. I also worked a little bit more on placing some glass along it so that mobs could not spawn inside of it, and it would be a safe exit should I need it. I began the next day by being greeted by some friends. I quickly dispatched their heads from their bodies, and then I headed into the Nether. I wanted to accumulate some blaze rods. I figured the Nether was probably safer than the overworld at this point, as if all the dead were on the Earth, they couldn't be in hell, right? That thought process worked for about 10 seconds. That theory was quickly disproven as I saw some men looking like they were on a trampoline, jumping looking for me. And once they got a taste of me in the air, they began hunting me down. But I dispatched their heads from their shoulders as well. The next day I found another fortress and I began accumulating all the blaze rods I would need. I knew I would need at least 15 of them, so this would take a little while. When I got home, I noticed that a giant skyscraper was missing. The builder had done their job finally. I began constructing the new walls along it as the skyscraper had been keeping out the mobs from before, and now they had open access to my entire compound. Once that was done, I began working on a new place for the house. The villagers were going to need a house if they were going to continue working for me in building. If I was going to raise an army, I was going to be able to house them all inside. The next day, my builder began work on the house and decided to climb atop this building and mine the dirt from there. She's got some incredible reach. I then began work on the second layer to my wall. I wanted to begin working on defenses as soon the zombies were going to be able to breach blocks, and then they could overthrow my base within the snap of a finger. So to keep them away, we were going to need good viewpoints and different defense posts that enabled us to keep them back, not just blocks in their way. I began the next day by lighting up the area between the two wall systems. I was now going to be working on some defenses that would keep the mobs at bay when they were able to actually start breaking blocks. First, I had to relearn how a dropper worked. I didn't exactly remember how it dispersed the lava and how the redstone interacted with it, so I did some tests before I began implementing it into my wall. I then began running redstone lines all across the back of my wall to power up the dispensers, that at a flick of a switch, they would release flowing lava walls and keep the zombies at bay. I had feared that soon they might become resistant to fire, but for now, this would work just fine. I began the next day by crafting some buckets, heading down into the mines and collecting some lava. I then began placing all the lava in the dispensers, so this way at a flick of a switch, the wall of fire could commence and keep the undead at bay. Whilst I was building, I noticed a giant hole in a building that I did not make. I was starting to fear that some of the zombies were beginning to learn how to break blocks. I needed to get this lava wall finished quickly. Now that one of the sides was finished with dispensers and 2 layers of walls, I wanted to start working on the other sides, but to do that I would need more wood. So I spent the rest of the day accumulating some more different types of wood, specifically oak wood, as that was the one that was required. I had tons of stone bricks because when my builder destroyed the skyscraper, they kept all the materials that they could inside of some chests. The next day I began building the second layer to my other walls. I knew if I had lava walls running across my base, I could at least stop the zombies for a while. But once the virus mutated and they became tougher and tougher, soon not even lava could keep them away. But it would always at least act as a deterrent to slow them down. But soon I'd have to work on other ways to keep them off my walls, because the minute they got to my walls, they'd be able to breach them or simply jump over them. And at that point my compound would be overrun, and I would be dead. So at all costs, they needed to stay away from the walls, especially when the virus had mutated to the extreme stages. It was important that I got this done now, before the virus mutated too much. I began the next day by giving my builder the necessary supplies to begin building themselves a house. Once they had a house, they'd be much more apt to build me other things like walls and different defense structures. After that, I began linking up all the redstone I had around my base. I wanted all my lava walls connected to one switch, so that in the event of an emergency, I could hit the switch and max protection would occur. The next day I had a theory. I wanted to work on some more defense systems, but to do that I would need some gunpowder. I knew there was a creeper spawner down inside of the mines, so I...
No.
number on that table. Austin, she's 4'7", 620.
Dad, stop it. It's not funny.
Brown hair, hazel eyes.
Oh, your kids all have the same color eyes.
Hey, I'm so tired and I can think up all this stuff already. This picture of her on there waiting going, message me, big boy.
Where does he get it from? It's just him. I mean, I know Papa was a character, but definitely not. Okay. On Papa's words. Yeah, Papa's he's got more of an imagination. Pick your dad. Hey, baby. Don't you, baby? Daddy. Miss you.
Hey, guaranteed.
House in on my foot.
Food and everything else. You did live your life.
Disgusting. That is like disgusting. Are you a fat shamer, Austin? You're one of those, huh? You don't like fat girls? Is that your problem? I mean, do you not see my stomach?
I'm not talking about the fat part. I'm talking about the welfare part.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
No teeth, six kids.
That's disgusting.
Walmart scooter.
Disgusting. She must know what she's doing if she's got 6 kids. Oh, they give me a hug.
Oh, wait for you, Austin.
headed down there and I began turning it into an automatic grinder so that I could begin accumulating as much gunpowder as I could. I would need a lot of gunpowder and sand for the next stage of defenses against the zombie hordes. Because when the blood moons would keep coming and the hordes would keep growing, I knew I was going to need more than fire to keep them at bay. The next day I returned to the surface and mined up the diamond ore that I had gotten with my Fortune 3 pickaxe. I then made some sabers and returned back down to the depths to enchant them. My second enchant gave me Fortune 3, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to accumulate as much gunpowder as I could, so I spent the rest of the day smacking the creepers around to accumulate that gunpowder. I spent the next 2 days mercilessly killing every creeper that spawned. I would need so much gunpowder for this next idea I had. It wasn't sinister at all. I decided I was going to go out exploring today, so I made sure my builder had all the supplies she needed, and then I headed off to my tracks, and I began my venture. I'm never gonna get tired of this roller coaster, it's so much fun. As I ventured through the old subway system, I placed down torches so that in the future mobs would not spawn in my path if I ever needed to make a quick escape. In front of me, some zombies tried to stand, but I cut them down on the way, and I made my way through all the city subway systems until I got out into the wild. He's looking for any ruins that might remain, perhaps some old bunkers with supplies that would help me keep my base safe. Whilst I attempted to cross a lake, I noticed these eel-like creatures that were keeping an eye on me. So to prevent them from consuming my soul, I sprinted into the lake and I swam to the other side, and I just made it up before they caught up to me. I spent the next day exploring these underground labyrinths again. I was hoping for some more loot, but I couldn't find the main room with all that good loot in it like we had last time. To begin the next day, I was attacked by these ravaging zombie-like wolves. I'm not quite sure what was stirring them up.
What?
Broke one of my flowers. You don't need to.
Sorry.
Sorry, it's in the water.
I didn't see it.
You didn't see the flowers?
No.
Oh, baby.
Up, but something in the air was changing. Whilst out exploring, I noticed a village. People were still surviving without walls and defenses. This is absolutely crazy. Maybe civilization does have a chance after all. In the distance from the village, I noticed a tower, so I began approaching it to see what it might hold. I didn't know if it was an empty structure, or maybe it had some secrets from the past inside that I could loot and try and take advantage of. Whilst exploring the underground area, I realized that this was just another labyrinth, and I wasn't really in the mood for one, so I decided to go looking for some new structures. I then witnessed a pack of sheep beating up a wolf. I'm not quite sure if this is how nature or nurture works, but you know what? The strongest will survive, I suppose. As the sun set and I just thought about my life so far in this apocalypse, I realized we had passed day 50. And day 50 were when the bosses began to spawn. This meant they were at my walls. They were going to ruin everything. I needed to get back as quickly as possible. After a day of traveling, I was able to make it back using my rail system, but I realized that my rail system was not reverse engineerable, and I had to climb the last part of it to make my way back. I had to get there as soon as possible because these bosses would tear down my walls if I was not there in time. As I rode past the undead sitting outside my wall, I noticed new creatures that I had not seen before. I immediately ran to my house to hit the emergency lever that allows the lava to flow. Oh, nope, not that lever, that lever. Alright, and then I ran back out after I grabbed some supplies to begin taking on the bosses. I knew jumping down would be a suicide mission, so I had to use my bow and arrow to try and keep them at bay. The virus was beginning to spawn ginormous zombies. At the moment, I think I could handle them with my lava traps and my bow. But soon, when the virus began to mutate inside of them and they could jump and scale my walls, we were going to have some real issues, and I needed a way to combat this before it was too late. After taking care of the undead, I went to inspect my walls to make sure everything was working correctly for the next night that we would have to face. I spent the next day doing some more exploring. The zombies were so fast now the virus had mutated them, and they were beginning to become quite a problem now that they could run faster than me. I began investigating the nearby buildings to see if there was any undiscovered loot that I had not seen before. Whilst adventuring, I noticed another tower I had not seen before, and I had the bright idea to go inside. Inside, there were the dead, mixed with zombies and every other unholy thing you can have inside of this game. I was barely able to fight my way through, till eventually I got to the reward, which was one enchanted golden apple. This wouldn't be useful for now, but in the end, we would need everything we could get. The tower had an underground area, so I decided to go and investigate it. I met many undead on my way down, but I really wanted to see where it led, as this was new terrain I had never seen before. A new biome emerged from under the earth. It was glowing, and it was very, very beautiful in a way. I'm not quite sure if this was the re-emergence of life or just the dead finding its fungus way to survive in the depths. But regardless, it was beautiful, and it really goes to show that life will find a way. I then saw these things and decided this was enough adventuring for now. It's time to go work on the base and make sure that we're safe. The next day, I assigned my builder to her very own house. This would make her a lot happier. I wanted to start focusing on building now. Walls, armories, everything to start building up an arsenal to be able to take on the last few days inside of this world. Because from day 95, and especially day 100, we would be fighting the hardest zombie hordes we've ever faced. And to do that, we would need all the help we could get.
You're so wise.
Yes, I am so wise. Thank you very much, Glenn. You're a great new builder. No accidents are, hopefully gonna happen to you. I wanted to make another layer of wall. I knew soon the zombies would be able to scale things and break my walls, but another layer would at least slow them down. I was gonna have Glenn build her special walls outside of the base, so I made a way for her to get in or out by building some doors. This way she could pathfind her way in and out during the day and nighttime, because every time at night she tries to come back to the town hall, and if there was no door, it might be kind of awkward. I then set a location for my first wall section. I didn't know what I wanted to go with, so I just chose cobblestone, because that's cheap, and I like affordable things. The next day I decided to go and gather some resources while Glenn was working. However, Glenn was having a problem with the door. She didn't know how to open it, so I had to open it for her, but hopefully she would learn that eventually. While she was building the wall, I decided to go and collect spruce for most of the day. I was going to be building a lot more structures soon, and I was going to need a lot of supplies if I wanted to do that. So I figured I should gather them now before the zombies are too strong, and begin pathfinding me from even farther away and sprinting at me in the later game. Hello there, friend. Can I recruit you to my cause? Would you like to fight some zombie hordes with me? I see you do not like my gift. I'm just going to exit slowly now. No hard feelings. Here's about some honey. As nightfall came, I realized I was a far distance from my base, so I began to sprint back. I also realized I was almost out of food. This was not a great combination. On my way back, I bumped into a village. I ran into a hut, and I closed it up with some logs. Nothing was getting in here tonight. I began the next day by sorting my items away and preparing to begin crafting. I wanted to get a new builder going because I wanted civilization to begin growing faster, and for that we would need a lot of construction workers. I then went out and collected some food, and then I placed down my new builder hall. This would enable me to have 2 builders going full time. This would be much better for production, and would allow me to establish more buildings quicker, and eventually get to an arsenal of men that could help me defend the camp. I then fed my citizens like the good lord of the land that I am, and I fed them some bread, but nobody picked up the new builder job. What's wrong with these guys? But I didn't have much time to investigate why they weren't picking it up, because you see, tonight was going to be a blood moon, and if you remember the last blood moon, well, just put it on steroids and then you have tonight. I had no idea if I was going to survive or my village was going to survive, but I was going to do my darn best to protect them. The zombies had learned new traits now, and I wasn't quite sure what they were, but I was ready to defend the camp at all costs. As I climbed up my walls, I quickly began to realize that this was way more zombies than there were last time, and my infinity bow was not going to be enough. But I began bowing them anyway because I'm a pog champ. I continued to bow them down and kept them at bay. They hadn't learned how to break blocks yet, which was good, because the minute they learned that, we were going to be in some serious trouble. But for now, they were still headbutting my walls, and I was able to keep them at bay with my bow. Thankfully, nothing was getting in behind me. Some were climbing on the roofs, but it was okay. I was able to handle them, and I survived the night. I began the next day by nearly killing myself. Pog champ. And then I dealt with the zombies and the outpour of lava that was all over my base. I cleaned everything up a little bit, and then I got back to work. Now I was stuck with the issue that nobody was building my new hut. Usually they're supposed to pick up a job when a new job appears, but no one was deciding to be the new builder. I have no idea why. It's not like I treat them poorly or anything. I'm a great lord over their land. So I went through my colonies to try and figure it out, and I spent most of the day just investigating what could be wrong. I suppose if I hit build building, that might help someone choose the job. The next day, after struggling to still figure out why no one was coming to build it, I realized that the lady had trapped herself inside of a building. This was the same lady that was climbing the vines on the building continuously just for fun. Oh boy, so I let her out of the door and she began building the structure. Finally, I had another builder's hut going up. She was using an iron door as her tool for removal, not exactly the most efficient use of time, so I decided to give her a hand and help her mine down the side of the building. I spent the rest of the day doing that, and I finally got the one layer she needed removed, so that tomorrow she could just build and she wouldn't have to worry about removing any blocks. The next day, Glenn had finished her first iteration of her wall, and I went to inspect it. What a cool little gizmo. Time to build 34 more. I then placed down the next structure wall so that she could begin building it, and then I made sure my other builder had enough resources, and I headed back down into the mines. I would need a lot more resources for the upcoming days if I was going to build an empire and build defenses all over my base for the incoming hordes as they grew stronger and stronger. I would need a lot more supplies, especially in the last 10 days. I spent the next few days just mining, and this was my thought process. I figured if I was going to be building traps everywhere and different gizmos to stop the zombies from entering my compound, I was going to need a ton of resources. And rather than gathering them every 10 days, I wanted to go on one big run, and that I wouldn't have to go mining again. I really don't like mining in the series as it concludes a lot of time and it's just very boring to watch. But I decided to get it all done in one go, so I could begin the more entertaining parts like building the traps and my defenses for the incoming hordes, because you see, especially for day 100, it's going to be a nightmare, because day 99 to 100, every single horde is going to be released with every single beast, and I'm going to have to stop them all within a 12-hour span. I'm going to have to defend the entire day and the entire night. And if I don't survive, I'm going to need backup plans. So I needed as much resources as I could get for my frontal assaults and my emergency plans as well. The next day's mission was to collect a lot of sand. Now that I had gunpowder, I would need sand to craft some items that I would require, but in the distance I noticed a temple. It not only had the items I wanted, but it had some potential loot I could use, so I decided to venture towards it and remove all the loot and the specific items that I would need from it. I was going to need two things, sugarcane and sand. Sugarcane was for paper, so I could begin making fireworks. For some of the endgame stuff I wanted to use as defenses, I needed a lot of distractions so the zombies would be drawn away by noise, and fireworks were a great way to accomplish this. That's another reason I gathered all that gunpowder and would continue to gather gunpowder in the incoming days. I also needed some more sand so I could get some glass, finish my railway system, just in case of emergencies. Day 68 to 69. I began the day by doing some more productive things like throwing my sand and all my ores inside of my smelter. I then placed down all of my sugarcane so that it would begin growing, and I moved to terraforming some of my base. Everything was bugging me that it wasn't flat, so I decided to start dispersing all of the items and make sure it was a nice flat land. I knew another zombie raid was coming up on day 70, so I wanted to be as prepared as possible and have as many vantage points as possible to be able to take them out and not be getting stuck on blocks when I'm trying to run towards everyone with a vengeful blade. I began the next day by crafting some bows. I knew the night would be full of terror, and I wanted a power 4 infinity bow if I had any chance at defeating all the mobs that were going to come in. I had a fear they were going to be able to break blocks now, so I had to make sure that I was as strong as possible. So I went down to the enchant area and brought a bunch of bows with me, and on the last one, I finally got infinity. I added it to my 2 power 4s to make a power 5 bow, and I added flame to it as well. I wouldn't say I was ready, but I was getting there. As nightfall approached, I placed a few last-minute defenses. I could shoot the TNT with my flame bow and blow up any surrounding mobs in the case of emergency. I didn't want to blow up too much of the terrain, but I figured if I needed to, this would help me a little bit. Upon re-entering my compound, I was immediately slammed with a mob. I began defending myself only to realize that more and more were pouring in. This was an emergency, so I ran to my house to hit the lever. Little did I know that they had broken some of the redstone that connected to some of the walls, and not all the walls activated. And as the zombies poured in and I thought I was safe, I realized that the wall was beginning to break. This was a dire situation, and I had one choice: stay in with my citizens and fight, or run away. I decided to do a victorious retreat up to the top of my little tower, and as I watched my walls burn, there was nothing I could do. If I went down, I would perish, and my citizens needed me to survive, as I had left them there to die. To rebuild. They had absolutely demolished everything. If there's still 3 more mutations left, I was so lucky surviving, I had no idea if I could survive again. The next day, I approached the house. It's good as new. It just got a couple little blemishes here and there. Oh my goodness. This looks like someone took a giant bite out of the top of my little fortress. It probably didn't taste very good, but hey, time to rebuild. I then located a giant hole. This must have been where the zombies were pouring through. Probably something I should fix. And then, block by block, decapitated head by decapitated head, I rebuilt my walls bigger, actually they were the same, and stronger, relatively the same strength, but okay, than ever. I was going to face down this threat. I was not running away. This was my compound. I mean, it was kind of a city, and I was not going to let it out of my grasp again.
I'm going to do my best work for you.
That's kind of you, yes. Do your best work, as I am your esteemed lord, and I defend you at all costs. Except for last night. Well, that sounded weird. I began the next day by doing some wheat farming, collecting all the goods for my new food storages. And then I continued rebuilding my walls to the utmost strength they could be at. I then spent some time connecting some redstone. I realized that the wall that the intruders had gotten through had no redstone connected to it, and that's when the lava dispensers fired off. So I made sure it was connected via the underground routes to the redstone, so that the next time I was attacked, I could face them off with lava, fire, and brimstone. After requesting not once, not twice, but 3 times to have this building repaired, nobody was repairing it. I don't understand the frustration, but I'll figure it out because I am the leader. And then my good old pal Glennon picked up the torch and began repairing. Good job, Glenn. I began the next day by placing some more wall schematics down to have my builders begin building them in the coming days. I wanted as many layers of wall as I could, because the final day on this earth, well, it was going to decide everything on day 100, and I needed as much backup as I could get. My next quest was going to be to kill the undead Guardian of the End. But to get there, I was going to need ender pearls, and to fight him, I was definitely going to need diamond armor, so I crafted my first full set, and then I headed down into the mines to enchant it. I knew these were going to be some PogChamp enchants. How do you like this for irony? I'm killing the undead to get experience to kill the undead. Get on, losers. And then my first enchantment. That's useful in a world with no creepers. And then I enchanted my chest plate. I knew I was going to get some oh, nope, okay. After some mild frustration, I got every single good enchant before this, and I don't really know what's going on here. I want one thing. It's just a protection blast. Only lasts for protection 3. I'd even take protection 2. You know what? Blast protection. You know, there's not one thing that blasts anything inside of this. I've never been blasted. I've never been. Why? Why? Why is my question to that? Why? I suppose the enchantment gods heard me after that mild rage, because I got some pretty decent boots and a pretty decent helmet. 2 most useless items, but you know what? I was a PogChamp and I was proud of it. The next day, before departing on my adventure, I made sure all the walls were being built, and I set one more structure to destroy from one of the giant towers. And then I ventured off after collecting some supplies towards collecting some more ender pearls. The only way to get ender pearls inside of this game is to go looting some of the dungeons, because there's no endermen. So I decided to go and find a dungeon, and cross my fingers there was ender pearls inside. In the effort to make myself go faster and shoot arrows behind me, I did manage to hit my minecart and completely stop myself. The next day, while exploring the icy tundra, I saw a bird. A majestic bird. Hello, Mr. Goat. I then found a dungeon, and I began exploring it and spelunking through all the labyrinths inside. This has quite a few mazes inside, and to get to the main chest room that could have ender pearls inside, I had to get through all of the floors, all of the spawners, all of the zombies, and eventually I made my way into the main rewards room, and inside were just enough ender pearls. Well, I actually didn't know that at the time, and it actually wasn't enough ender pearls, but I digress and say I found some ender pearls and I was very excited. And then I threw my first ender pearl in the air, and it signified the oh, it's behind me, the direction on where to go. Okay, why is it up there? Against short people. I'll show you. I'll build my way up there and grab my pearl back. The next day, I ran into a slight problem. It was an ocean. I would craft myself a giant boat to cross the sea or the ocean, whatever this is. Upon placing my new boat, it disappeared. You know, like literally, I have no idea where it went. I don't think it wanted to go across an ocean. How dare it refuse me like that? So I crafted another one and bang! It appeared in my inventory. But I got rid of it like the peasant it was, and I began crossing the 7 seas in my new battleship. I call it the Cruiser 2 Paddle. The next day, as night closed in and I was almost about to go to sleep, I found the portal location. And after digging down, made the achievement, I Spy. And I spied not a lot of things, but I went to look for the portal. Sure enough, I found the portal room, and I thought I had just enough eyes, but turns out I had one less than I needed. So I decided to go venturing inside of the stronghold to find the last eye that would unlock the undead boss. I didn't find any eyes yet, but I found some Frostwalker 2 with efficiency 4. It's the weirdest couple of enchantments I've ever found on one book before. And then, 3 chests in, I found my ender pearl. I had brought 1 blaze powder with me, and 14 blaze rods, but 1 specific blaze powder for this pearl. I added them together, and then I headed back up to the surface to swap out my lava bucket for a water bucket. And then, it was time. I was going to fight this dragon like I had never fought him before, pulling out some sick moves, and hopefully defeating him in the end. After struggling to gather food, I arrived home on day 87, and the first thing I did, well, was gather food. Then I moved outside my vase and began placing some more wall schematics for my builders to finish. I gave them a hand removing some blocks, as day 100 was coming, and we were going to need every bit of defenses we could get, because the onslaught on day 100 was going to test everything we were made of. The next day I began a huge project. I wanted to have sort of a doomsday bunker in case everything went wrong. So I decided this house was going to be it. But to be a sufficient bunker, I was going to need some sort of lava pit around it. So I began digging out the area to start building a lava pit. But then I kept digging and digging over the next few days, and I discovered an idea. What if I made a giant hole that went all the way down to bedrock, so that any zombie that dared approach my bunker would feel the wrath of falling to the Earth's core? Once my doomsday bunker was finished, I went down to the mines and I began slaying creepers for gunpowder. I was going to need a lot of gunpowder for the upcoming projects. The next day, I was still slaying more creepers. I wanted an entire inventory of gunpowder to make TNT, rockets, fireworks, and everything else that would require gunpowder that I would need for distractions or for weapons. Once I had accumulated all the gunpowder that I would need, I came back to the surface and began crafting dispensers. I was going to place the dispensers all along my walls where the lava buckets were, and then in this way they could begin firing fireworks, TNT, and other objects to distract the zombies or to kill them. I ended off the day by testing some fireworks strategies that I had. The more colorful and the louder, the better. I realized that if I was going to make the fire charges that I needed, I was going to need a lot more blaze powder. So I headed back into the nether and I began slaying blazes. They were spawning like crazy, so it was really easy to do, and I completely farmed the blaze rods right out of them. And once I had enough, I came back to the overworld. The final 2 days of preparation before the night of day 99. I spent this time crafting a lot of fireworks, and then I began to place dispensers all over my base. You see, although the fireworks would distract the zombies at the walls, I also wanted firework dispensers all over my base, and in this way, if it did get overrun, we could distract them inside, and we thought of a new plan. So I began setting up redstone to all the dispensers around my base, and then hooking them up to the walls. It would have to go on a repeater system if this were to work. I hope we never get to having to set this off. But if we do, we'll be ready. The strategy was simple. All the fireworks would distract the zombies, and when I had to make it to my hut, I would light the pink wool on fire. I chose pink because of the new pink hoodie we're releasing on Mudflap Shop. And when I lit the pink wool, it would immediately start causing any zombie that stepped on it to plummet all the way to bedrock and to their death. This was only a last resort, as it would most likely burn the house down and burn our city down. But we needed the contingency in place just in case the zombies broke through our defenses. And then during the day 99, I crafted a literal rocket launcher. Yep, they're in this pack, and you're darned if I'm not going to use them. And as the night broke, I didn't want to use any of my defenses yet, because if I could hold them off of my walls, that's what I wanted to do. So I began bowing them away, and for a while it was working. I was keeping them at bay, nothing was breaching my rear walls or my side walls, and we were safe for the time being. For a moment I almost thought we were winning, and then zombies began to attack me atop my tower. I took care of them, but this was not a good sign. This means they were starting to get into the base, and we were gonna have to deal with this. And just as I feared, we became overrun with the Horde. As more hordes were spawning, we had no chance against them. I did my best, but I retreated back to the bunker, forgetting to light the wool on fire, and I hit the lever that would initiate the first phase of defenses. The lava was released, and the initial firework distraction went off. This was the first layer of defense. I had not initiated the others yet because if I could, I didn't want to, as they would ruin a lot of the base, and if I could hold out with these defenses, then we would be okay. But as they began to break down my walls of my house, things took a turn for the worse. You know what? If they weren't gonna play fair, I wasn't gonna play fair either, so I took out my MTO2 flash, and I began lighting them up with all the rockets that I had. I dismantled the hordes, and I tore them to pieces. They were destroying my only home, and I would not have it. As day 100 opened, raining and shady, they would not stop spawning. I began to bow them down even more, and then I flew to a rooftop to get a vantage point. And as I aimed my rocket launcher, I realized I was out of ammo. Was this the end? Knowing all was lost, I flew to something that Glenn had made for me a few days ago. I named it our last hope. As I climbed into the rocket and initiated launch, the zombies began to break the platform below me, but to no avail. The rocket launched, and I left my citizens behind. A king's duty is to her citizens. I abandoned them. I would have to return, or else live out the rest of my days in shame. But to return, we would need to survive 100 days in space.
Gotcha, baby. Okay. I love bagels, but they do not last long enough. They really don't.
Amen.